Hey everyone, George here. I hope everyone is good out there. I just wanted to sit down real quick and have a conversation with you about a movie that I actually forgot existed. It's a movie I like, actually. I want to talk about the 1989 film Leviathan. This film was directed by George P. Cosmatos. And the creature effects were done by Stan Winston. There was a lot of talented people behind this movie, so it really is an interesting one. The film stars Peter Weller. You know, he played RoboCop. Richard Crenna, Amanda Pays, Daniel Stern. You know, he played Marv in the Home Alone movies. Ernie Hudson, he played Winston in the Ghostbuster films. Michael Carmine, Lisa Elbacher, Hector Elizondo, and Meg Foster. The screenwriters for this film are really interesting too. This movie was written by David Webb Peoples. He was the co-writer for Blade Runner, and Jeb Stewart. He was the co-writer for the film Die Hard. Okay, let me explain to you what this movie is about without spoiling anything for you. Basically, this movie follows a crew of deep-sea miners. They are living and working on this vessel that sits at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And, you know, they're mining minerals. And they come across a downed Soviet vessel. They go in there, they extract some artifacts from it, and unfortunately there is a virus attached to some of these artifacts that infects some of the crew and then turns them into monsters. And then they just have to deal with it. That's what the movie's about. Okay, so what happened with this movie? It has a really interesting little history in Hollywood, if you will. So what happened was James Cameron was a big deal, still is a big deal, right? He made Terminator, he made Aliens, and then everyone heard that his next film was going to be The Abyss. So all these studios started clamoring and rushed to make their own underwater sci-fi horror film. And so Leviathan's one of those movies. And I would say out of these movies, Leviathan is probably the best of these Abyss knockoffs, if you will. Obviously, out of all the movies that came in that time period, The Abyss is the best movie that came from that period. The Abyss is a very good movie, a very, very good movie. Leviathan is a fun one. Leviathan is not as good as The Abyss, but I would say out of the other films that came out within that like 2-year period or year-and-a-half period of movies where the studio was rushing to get their own underwater sci-fi horror movie out, Leviathan is the best of those knockoffs. And for good reason. Actually, the movie itself has a lot to love. It's a lot of fun. There's some good creature effects in it. There's some fun characters in it. Yeah, it just has a lot to love. You can see that the studio and the filmmakers really did try to make a good film here. The budget for the movie was $21 million. It only made back $19 million. So, you know, it was a loss. Not a massive loss, but it was a loss. Just for comparison, the movie The Abyss had a budget of $43 to $47 million. And it brought in $90 million in the box office. You can't really compare it with that movie. The Abyss is obviously the way better film, and it obviously brought in way more money. The thing about the movie The Abyss, it ended up not being like this like sci-fi horror movie at the bottom of the ocean, but Leviathan went a different route. Leviathan decided to knock off The Thing and Alien/Aliens. You can tell by the creature effects and what the creature that they were dealing with, or the enemy that they were dealing with down below, was definitely pulled from The Thing. You know, it's a virus that mutates your DNA and makes you this weird fusion of limbs and mouths and teeth and stuff. They really did pull a lot from The Thing when it came to creature design. You can even make some crazy bold theory, which I don't know. Could this exist inside the Thing universe? Because, you know, they got it from a downed Soviet vessel, right? We don't know if this thing was actually manufactured by the Soviets in the film, right? It could have been something that was just found, in the early 80s. Some Soviet scientists grabbed it and did experiments on it. So for all we know, it might actually be the same virus. It could very much have been the same virus. I will make the case that this movie could very much take place in the same universe as The Thing. So aside from The Thing, this movie also rips off from Alien and Aliens. The atmosphere of the ship feels like Alien. It really does. It feels like the movie Alien. It doesn't look as good. Like, they really did a good job making the set. Don't get me wrong. But the lighting is a bit flatter than you would see in Alien and Aliens. If you watch the movie Alien, there's a lot of shadows and harsh lighting setups in that movie that you don't get in this film. Yeah, so the atmosphere of this movie really did feel like Alien and Aliens. The captain and the doctor on board of this vessel types in questions to some supercomputer, asking it questions of how to handle certain situations. Just like in Alien, there's a supercomputer on the ship that's answering questions. Also, the captain of the ship throughout the movie is in communication with a VP or a higher up executive at the corporation that owns this mining vessel. It's very similar to Alien and Aliens, where it has this evil corporation that is mining for minerals and comes across this organism that is very dangerous to the human race. Also, there's a fun little thing where there's a underwater, a deep sea spider or animal down there that shows up a couple of times. And it's actually very reminiscent of the facehugger from the Alien movies. Obviously, it's not really an antagonistic creature. It's just a deep sea animal that kind of gets in their way from time to time. But it definitely does feel like they were trying to get something that would remind you of a facehugger in the movie. So it's really funny. There's a lot of stuff they pull from the Alien movies and put it into this film. And another thing that they pull in from the Alien movie is actually when the supercomputer is giving answers or doing whatever it's doing, it makes the same sound effect you get from Alien. So at the beginning of the movie Alien, the ship is waking up. The people are getting out of their stasis, right? And all the machines are starting to turn on, and then there's text that's going on the screen. When there's text going on the screen in this movie, it makes the same sound effect. And if it's not the same sound effect, it's pretty darn similar. Also, this movie has a doctor on board that you don't fully trust in the movie. Just like in the movie Alien, you don't fully trust the doctor as well. And there's also a room that has dangling chains. That was that scene in Alien when the alien comes down and gets her victim. It's in the room with the dangling chains and the water's trickling down. There's a room like that similar in this movie as well. So they really did pull a lot from it. And again, I don't want to spoil anything, but I'll tread lightly here when I explain to you the creatures in this movie, because they're actually really cool. So basically, it's a virus that attaches to your DNA and manipulates the cells and DNA in your body. And it doesn't use a brain. There's no nervous system. So it's really funny is that there is a scene in the movie where they're getting rid of an infected body from the vessel. And when the elevator goes down, and they're removing the body, the leg of the infected person gets cut off from the elevator and falls into the ship and remains in the ship. And then it goes away and hides somewhere. So the main creature that they're dealing with originally was just a human leg. Eventually it starts manipulating its DNA and its cells and turns into this monster. But at the very beginning, it was just a severed leg just squirming around in the water. It's quite funny that way. And, that was pulled from, The Thing, the movie The Thing, where it didn't really matter what part of the body it was. Like, it didn't need its head, it didn't need its like heart or anything like that. Even if it was like a limb that got like lopped off, that limb was still alive. Because as long as the organism is in the cells of its host, that part of its body is alive. So like a severed limb could be its own organism, will just sprout legs and move around, right? The same thing that happened in The Thing happened in this movie too. So, it was really cool. It's really cool creature design, really fun stuff. Not as good as The Thing. If you want a creature that does things like that, go see the movie The Thing first. And then if you want to see more of that, then watch this movie Leviathan. And, you really should see this movie. It's not an amazing movie, but it's fun. It really is fun. And you can see they really tried something here. And basically these movies that came out within this 1.5 year period that tried to compete with The Abyss, all these films were rushed. So basically The Abyss had this crazy production where James Cameron didn't want to fake things that took place under the water. He actually had a giant tank that he shot all the underwater shots underwater. So that actually extended the timeline of the production because there were a lot of issues when making this movie. And so these other studios that were making these Abyss knockoffs that they were trying to like cash in on were like rushing to get their movies out. And you really can see that in these movies. Some of them were good, some of them are not. And Leviathan, in my opinion, of these knockoff movies, Leviathan is the best of these knockoff movies. The thing is, though, with Leviathan, is that it felt rushed. It felt like it wasn't a fully fleshed out idea, a fully fleshed out concept. Like sometimes the dialogue in this movie is really silly and forced. The lighting, I felt like in some shots were quite flat. The music came off a bit cheesy at times too. But yeah, it's still a fun movie, but it definitely showed that they were like quickly trying to force this movie out as quick as possible because, I feel like if they let this bake a little more and let this maybe come out a year later or just some time later and just rework the script a little bit more, I think this movie really could have benefited from that, but oh no, it's still a fun movie. It's not great, it won't blow your mind, but it's a really nice sci-fi movie from the late 80s, early 90s. It has some creative and cool creature design, some really fun atmosphere. It has a really nice atmosphere. If you're like have an itch to watch more alien movies, but you've seen all the alien movies, then see this film because it really does feel like another alien movie, just because of the atmosphere of it. This movie, they tried to make this movie something special, and they didn't knock it out of the park. They really tried. They tried swinging for the fences with this one, and, the ball didn't go over the fence. It didn't go over the fence. Maybe they got like a triple, but this movie really is one of the better sci-fi movies that came out of the 80s. They shamelessly pulled from The Thing. They shamelessly pulled from Alien and Aliens. But they took those concepts and tried to make their own story and their own film with it. And it works to a degree. It really does. It's a fun film. I would say watch this movie if you've seen all the Alien movies and you want to see more. You've seen The Thing and you want to see more. And you just want to see a fun 1980s sci-fi horror movie. Because, you can't go wrong with it. Don't go in expecting it as good as Alien and Aliens and The Thing, but, it's a fun one. It really is. So that's why I recommend that you watch Leviathan.